Hello, good people of YouTube. Mountbatten here, and today the public test for update 14.5 has gone live. And if you want to check out what I'm talking about in this video or any of the new content in update 14.5 early, all you have to do is download the PT client to your computer, which is very simple. You just go to download additional instance, hit the drop down menu, and for the region hit PT, and the PT client will download to your computer. You can try out all of this new stuff early before anybody else does. So with 14.5, we're getting quite a bit of new content in that update and some fan favorite returning content like asymmetric battles. But that's not the focus of this video. The focus of this video is on one of the new ships that we're getting in update 14.5, which is, in my opinion, a little silly, shall we say, because the title is correct. Or the thumbnail. I'm not sure exactly where I'm putting this at in this video just yet. But yes, a cruiser with more HP than the Kremlin is coming out in update 14.5. Which is just downright insane. And this is the one you're watching on screen right now, the Varese, which is the new Tier 10 Italian experimental cruiser based on the Michelangelo. Now you might be saying, Sealord, that's not over 105 or 111,000 HP, whatever you get the Kremlin's HP up to with the flag. That's only 85,000 HP. First off, only 85,000 HP on a cruiser is insane. That is still more HP than many Tier 9 battleships in the game. But yes, you are right, that is in fact not a number bigger than the Kremlin's HP number, which is, I believe, 111,000 once you get the flag on there. However, when you take a closer look at the abilities and the consumables of the Varese, that's where we get into absolute just absurdity. So the Varese, yes, it is a Michelangelo clone, essentially. And in fact, most things about the Varese are exactly the same as the Michelangelo, with the exception of 2 or 3 stats. The first one being that, yes, its base secondary range is 12.5 kilometers, which is really darn good for a Tier 10 secondary cruiser. It's the same secondary range as you'll find on most of the best secondary ships at Tier 10, including the GK, the Libertad, and the Schlieffen. And now the Varese has it here. So that's pretty good. Its guns, its main battery guns, have also been tuned up quite a bit. Their Sigma has been increased from, I believe it was 1.6 to 1.95. So the dispersion of the main battery guns is much, much better than the Michelangelo. And as you can see too, obviously its HP has been buffed up as well to 85k. Now when you take a look at the consumables, there's also been some changes here, where it's lost the smoke generator consumable, and it's gained the heavy repair party consumable, which regenerates in the neighborhood of 1,000 HP for 45 seconds. 1,000 HP for 45 seconds. So that means with each push of the button with the Varese, you get 45,000 HP back. You add up all the heals that I have on it with its base HP, and you get 220,000 potential HP, which is a ridiculous number for a cruiser to have access to. And if you're wondering, the Kremlin has a mere 197,000 damage. I'm sorry, 197,000 HP if you take Superintendent and you get the additional heal. And if you toss Kutuzov's Pity Heal on top of there too, you'll probably get around 205, 207-ish thousand HP, somewhere in there, which is a bit more, but it's still less than what you can get here on the Varese. So that is an absurd amount of HP for a cruiser to have access to, especially one that's as aggressive as the Varese. Which means that when you have two Varese battling one another, it's just a long slog of them just farming each other out, as you'll see in this video, which obviously leads to some pretty high damage numbers by the end of the game. Now keep in mind too that this is all on a Michelangelo hull. The Michelangelo is a fairly tanky Tier 9 cruiser, so yeah, shifting it to Tier 10 isn't too much of a tall order, considering, again, you get the buff to the HP and the ridiculous long duration heals. I believe they're called, what, heavy heals or whatever, heavy repairs. So, yeah. Now, go back to what we talked about with the secondaries. It has 12.5 kilometer secondaries, and it has the fight or flight mechanics baked in as well, which they did a little differently this time around with the second round of experimental ships. With the first round of experimental ships, the ships would spawn in at about half HP, which would have their fight or flight mechanic going pretty well. But now with this new set of experimental ships, which are all secondary based, you do spawn in with full HP. And as you take damage during the match, some truly magical things happen. So with the Varese, as you'll notice, as I take damage, you'll notice that my secondary guns, well, obviously they're reloading faster because you get the baked-in buff to the reload time as you take damage, and the range of the secondary battery guns increase. That's right, dear viewers. As you take damage, the secondary battery range increases, which leads to some Libertard-like secondary ranges, and beyond, believe it or not. When you get really down low in the Varese, you'll have around a 15 kilometer and change secondary battery gun range, which is just ridiculous. And at the rate that you'll be slinging those secondary shells because of the buff to the reload time from Adrenaline Rush and the buff to the reload time from the fight or flight mechanics, oh yeah, it's just a never-ending stream of secondary shells at 15 and change kilometers, which looks so ridiculous in game. Now, keep in mind too that these are SAP secondaries, so they actually have enough oomph to do a lot of damage, unlike HE shells of the same caliber, which means that I was going to say the Michelangelo, the Varese just absolutely eats cruisers. You have better secondaries than the Michelangelo. You have the fight or flight mechanics in there, and you have more accurate main battery guns, and you have the heavy heals, which are just so stupid. When I was playing in the PT server, now keep in mind too, this is the PT server, right? So the way the PT server works is that the matches tend to be smaller in terms of the players that you're playing against, because not everyone downloads the PT client. Obviously, many players would like to just grind on their main account. You do get rewards from the PT client, but definitely not enough to sit in there all day and play on the PT client all freaking day, right? So the matches do tend to be a little bit smaller in the numbers. However, they do get filled in with bots up to a certain point. So by playing the PT server, you do tend to have a little bit more of inflated performance, because bots are bots. They like smacking W and selling right at you, so you get a lot of free damage. But I think the background footage speaks for itself, especially when myself and the other Varese just start farming each other with the SAP secondary shells. So you can see that the SAP secondary shells, again, if you play Michelangelo Napoli, you guys know this. These shells are fantastic at farming out and murdering, destroyers, light cruisers, heavy cruisers too, especially with the larger 152 caliber, 152 millimeter secondary guns. Those are very good at farming out light and heavy cruisers. And obviously the 90mm guns, no slouch in that department either. Now when it comes to battleships, you're not doing, as well as you are against light cruisers and heavy cruisers, but I mean, you're still farming down their superstructure pretty dang good, especially when we're talking about from like friggin' 14 kilometers. 14 kilometers is the range that most Vareses will probably have. That was at around 50% HP, right where it's comfortable enough to say, okay, I got time. If I eat some shells, I can pop my heavy repairs and get most of my HP back if I can. So I'm comfortable, chilling at this level of performance. So that's where most Vareses are going to sit probably once this gets into the live client. And the plunging fire at those ranges, you're just raining these shells down on battleship superstructures. So you're farming the living crap out of them like that. So this thing is pretty ridiculous. Now, it does not have the burst fire mode. They ripped that out at some point. By the way, the title was even more correct back when this thing was originally announced. Believe it or not, this thing originally did have like 107,000 HP. I am glad they removed that, because that's just stupid. Like, it legitimately had more HP than Kremlin. I mean, it still does have more potential HP than Kremlin at this point. But, like, it had more, ship HP than Kremlin when it was originally announced, which is just absolutely absurd. I'm surprised I missed that in the dev blog when this thing was announced. I kind of just skimmed over these things because they're experimental ships anyway. They aren't even here on a permanent basis. But yeah, so like that's where they're coming from with this thing. But yeah, it doesn't have the burst fire mode because it turns out, yeah, the 15-kilometer SAP secondaries are, in fact, enough to carry this thing in today's World of Warships. So you don't get the burst fire mode. You don't get the exhaust smoke consumable. So it is a bit more balanced, I would say, than like the Vyazma, right? While this is the Vyazma is a battleship and a cruiser slot, this is, well, it actually, believe it or not, this is a battleship and a cruiser slot, but it's not like the Vyazma, so I guess not that big of a deal. Because this is I believe it was either a real battleship or it was a battleship design that the Italians had back in the day, and Wargaming just shoved it up to tier 9 and put it in a cruiser slot. But thankfully, for it, definitely for sure, it is still in a cruiser slot nowadays. So, but anyway, yeah. So this is the battleship and a cruiser slot, I guess, of this group of ships. But anyway, so it is still really tanky for a cruiser. The secondary performance is very much there. It is absurd seeing these things get out to 14, 15 kilometers. Main battery guns are a lot more accurate, but no burst fire mode, no exhaust smoke. So while, yes, it is very, very powerful in the right situation when the secondaries are going, it's not anywhere near as hard to deal with as something like the Vyazma. Because just like the Michelangelo, the Varese is very much not a fan of large caliber AP to its sides. Now, obviously, if it's angled, it can tank up quite a bit. But if you catch its broadside and you citadel the thing, the heavy repair teams, they do not get any type of buff to the citadel damage it can recover, unlike some other ships with these improved heals. So any citadel damage you do to it does very much handicap this thing. So that's a good balancing factor in my opinion. And it, again, losing the exhaust smoke. So it can't sit in its exhaust smoke and farm you out from 15 kilometers away, which is, again, good. That's excellent that they had, that sense to not allow it to do that. Because if it had the exhaust smoke, oh my god, this thing would be so cracked. It's pretty goofy as is right now, but considering, its main battery guns location, if you're not familiar with the Michelangelo, as you can tell, both of its main battery guns are in the middle of the ship. Not on the bow, not on the stern, right smack dab in the middle. So they have some atrocious firing angles. If you want to get one of them on target, you have to show an uncomfortable amount of broadside. If you want to get both of them on target, like you are showing more than enough side to get citadeled. So that's another huge balancing factor in there for me at this moment too. But the secondaries are insane. Like, y'all thought Libertad's secondaries are bad. This thing's secondaries, especially again once you get it around half HP, it's comical the amount of sap shells you're spewing out and the range that you're spewing these sap shells out at. So that's the whole focus of this second wave of experimental ships. They're all secondary ships, which, like on one hand, I love secondary ships. I love brawling. I love anything that pushes you to brawl. But I don't like these experimental ships because they are this ridiculous, right? Again, this is a cruiser with more potential HP than a Kremlin, which is one of the tankiest ships in game. It's just so goofy in my mind. But that is the Varese. Now, once again, once these ships get released in 14.5, they are only here until, I believe, the end of 14.7. So anything that you sink into getting these ships, it's gone, right? Because you don't get to keep these ships afterwards. But I just thought we'd take a look at the Varese today, which is undoubtedly one of the goofiest ships to come out here recently. It is fun. I'm not going to lie. It's fun to play. You can download the PT client right now and take it for a spin for yourself and decide, is this something that I'm going to want to grind out on my main account and then only have for the two patches, because you get 14.5 and 14.6, and when 14.7 comes out, that's it for the experimental ships. So I would say try it out for yourselves and make that determination for yourself. But like I said, it's fun, it's goofy. It's going to be interesting to see how this exactly meshes on the live server once it does get added there. I've seen a couple of players comment on how ridiculous it is, especially when it had the 107,000 HP, right? That version was stupid. But yeah, it looks like it's gonna be a fun ship, but again, not one that I would think is really worth grinding out, considering again you don't get to keep it after 2 updates. So let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. This is a quick look at the Varese, the upcoming Tier 10 Italian, I'll say special, experimental cruiser in quotation marks. So again, let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, make sure to drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel, all that jazz, and hope to catch you guys in the next one.